Well, back in your day, back in most days, if
Hmm.
you came out and you had an idea and you put it out there, and you couldn't defend it, that was kind of an embarrassment.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you kind of walked away in shame or whatever. Maybe you went back and you tried to figure out why you couldn't defend it. And maybe you just didn't, maybe it was true and you didn't have the resources to defend it, or maybe it was false and you had to find the truth. But now if somebody can't defend their beliefs, it doesn't matter to them
Hmm.
because you don't have to. You're
Yeah.
the God, you're the
Yeah. Though
source.
it's my
Well, you don't
truth.
have to
So,
defend it.
yeah.
It's your truth. So why does anybody else care? Well, why
Hmm.
do you have to defend it to somebody else? The reason you should have to defend it to somebody else is that's only reason you know if it holds water or not.
Hmm.
If it's when you believe in objective truth, because now, if you're just, let's just say it's a normal world, and you have a belief and you're talking about it amongst your friends and you all believe the same thing, there's always certain things that you just take for granted that nobody challenges. Maybe they suspect there's a problem, but they don't want to say it because they don't want to have to go through all that hassle of trying to find another belief or whatever. Or maybe they just don't even think about it. So you take those beliefs up against people who disagree with you and kind of know what they're talking about. And then you're going to find whether there's a hole in your beliefs or your ability to defend your beliefs. Again, your beliefs can be true, you're just not defending them well. Either
Hmm.
way, whether you're not defending them well or they're not true, if you take them up against people who disagree with you and you realize something's wrong, then you can go back and you can check and you can say, well, what is it? And if it's just you're not defending it well, now you can defend it better. And if it's false, well, now you need to find the truth. But when you either just keep it amongst you and your friends who believe the same thing and don't ever take it out of there, or if you think you're the source of your own truth and it doesn't matter, either way, in the real world, you could be believing something false and not know it, not ever know it.
Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Willard Preacher Podcast. I am Matt, a former student at Penn State, and I'm joined by Gary Cattell, Penn State's Willard Preacher, um, and this is the Willard Preacher Podcast. So, welcome, Gary. How are you?
I'm doing well, and you?
Doing just fine. It's been a little while. We've done some testimony videos and we've done some other videos. It's probably been a couple weeks since our last testimony video. So we're kind of getting back into the swing of the two of us kind of chatting about things. I think you had mentioned that perhaps there was something that you'd like to talk about related to your time on campus this semester.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out, and I'm still trying to figure out Gen Z and how they think
Mm-hmm.
and why they think the way they think. And I was reading something by Larry, I think it's Larry Arnn,
Okay.
president of Hillsdale College. And it struck me that when they say that everybody has their own truth, because like we've said this before out here, you can talk to somebody face to face and say, why don't you ask the question, why can't we know who God is? I'll steadfastly refuse to ask it, which is new. It wasn't like that when you were here. It wasn't like that my whole time on campus from the 80s till today, or till not that long ago. And so I'm trying to figure out why is that? Why are they like that? And I came up with a preliminary theory, and you can tell me what you think. But and this again, this comes from something Larry Arnn had written. Arnn had written. Um, they say everybody has their own truth, right? What never really occurred to me, and it should be obvious, but never really occurred to me, what that means is everybody is the source of their own truth. And it's just kind of another way of saying it. But if I'm the source of my own truth, then what do I care what you have to say? What do I care if you want me to challenge an idea or something? It doesn't matter to me because I'm the source of my truth. You're the source of your truth. We're all playing gods. And God is ultimately the truth. But if I'm the source of my own truth, then why do I have to even think about anything? Why do my why do my ideas have to be consistent? Why do I have to challenge somebody else's truth? They're the source of that truth. That's them.
Hmm.
So preliminarily, I kind of think that that's might be some of what's going on, and why nobody's interested in really finding truth. Because why should you find the truth? Or why should you even challenge the idea that you can't know the truth? Because there is no objective truth that you can know because you're the source of your own truth. You already know that.
Hmm.
So why even think about it? Why even care? You can't know who God is. You can't know what the truth is. You can't know why we exist. You can't know what happens after death and how to prepare. Basic morals of secularism. Why even care? Because they're the source of that truth. I'm the source of my truth, and if they don't measure up, so what?
Hmm.
They probably won't. But what does it matter? You can't. There's no objective truth out there to obtain because everybody's a source of their own, which is consistent with atheism, which is what secularism really is. Really is atheism. Whether you say there is no God or you can't know who God is, basically Xing God out of the equation.
Hmm.
And now, what does that mean? Well, it means there's no truth. There's no ultimate truth you can know. Especially if you say you can't know who the God is, because you can say, okay, well, I believe there's a God. Somebody doesn't believe there's a God. I believe God is X. Somebody else believes he's Y. Nobody can know. Nobody can know what the right morals are. Nobody can know, again, why we exist or what happens after death and how we prepare. Nobody can know these things anyhow. So what does it matter?
Hmm.
That's kind of the attitude you find on campus. What does anything matter? Which was different than when you were here and most of the time up there because people did believe they could know truth. So they'd be hanging out there at the steps of Willard, and there'd be sometimes knockdown, drag out arguments because everybody believed that they could know truth. And so if you challenged what they believed was truth, there could be a good argument and good debate. And then the benefit of that always was people, not so much the person that you were debating with, but the others sitting around listening, because they could hear two sides of an argument. And that was always, I thought, a great benefit for them. But now, why even bother with that? And they don't bother with it. Nobody hangs out there anymore. And next people will come and we'll talk and stuff. Once in a while, there'll be somebody who you can kind of see it hasn't bought into all this and
Hmm.
is really seeking. But for the most part, I don't think they find any reason to seek. What's the point?
Right.
So that's what I've been thinking about. I don't know if you have any ideas on that or thoughts on that.
No, I mean it's what a unfortunate place to find themselves in, you know. I mean, why do they go to school? You know, why do they pursue really much of anything if they're the source of their truth, and therefore there's nothing really worth getting excited about or moving towards? Do you think that I mean, so you're hitting on this idea of like part of the reason why you don't think there's truth is because you consider yourself the source of truth. You know, I imagine you could probably hit on that as a preaching point pretty directly. Do you think they would respond to you making that point, or would they respond to you saying, "Have you considered that you are not the source of of all truth or your truth?"
Uh, First of all, remind me of that. First of all, one of the things you said, so I think they believe you can know material truths,
Okay.
right? Because you can do they all believe in the scientific method and all that sort of stuff. So for the most part, I think they believe that, unless it comes to transgenderism or something like that, then they take that off the table. Um, but yeah, this is pretty new, and I can put it out there for them. But for a lot of them, this is so ingrained in them
Hmm.
and so a part of who they are
Yeah.
that once something gets that ingrained, number one, you have to hear something a number of times before it starts to click in.
Hmm.
And when they're just kind of walking by and it's kind of hit and miss,
Yeah.
I suppose if God wanted somebody to hear it a number of times, he could bring them around, at the right time or whatever. But I don't think just hearing something like that once. shouldn't say that because God can do anything. I remember the one time I was saying something about, I forget what it was now, but it was just like it's just like a one-liner, and God took it to this and kind of made it real to this girl that was walking by. She came by later and told me that she then, this was a long time ago, but she then went up to her dorm room and there were some Christians in her dorm room. And it was something, maybe it was something like if you're just going to church and but you can go to church and not really believe in God or something like that. Not, you can't be, whatever. She took it up to her friends who are Christian, Protestant, sort of Protestant Christian. And they then talked to her about it, and she then became some manner of Protestant Christian. But and I've noticed that over the years. It's a little bit of a side, but I've noticed that over the years that you can go out there and you can give these apologetics that you may think are great or whatever. But normally, if somebody's affected by it, it's usually one line. God
Hmm.
uses the one line, and it's not that the apologetics aren't good. They are, and they have to be put out there because people have to know that the faith can be defended. But it's usually when somebody's really affected. It's one line, sometimes just a few words, and God takes that into their heart, and they kind of wakes them up.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I don't know. I just kind of hit on this towards the end of right before spring break. This is spring break, so right before spring break, and I spoke about it a couple times. Again, whether it's going to have an effect or not, probably not on a whole, but maybe for somebody.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's such a difficult place that they find themselves in because back in my day when we thought that you could have a view and it was worth defending, that that the demon of the bad idea, at least can be you can deal with that a little bit, but this is like there's no foundation. It's like, well, why should I listen to you? Why should I think there's anything there at all? And um yeah, when you think that you can't know truth, it's such a black hole. Um,
Yeah.
that it's really hard to get any traction on that.
Yeah. I was gonna say something. I mean, it'll probably come back to me. Um, oh yeah. But back in your day, back in most days, if
Hmm.
you came out and you had an idea and you put it out there, and you couldn't defend it, that was kind of an embarrassment.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you kind of walked away in shame or whatever. Maybe you went back and you tried to figure out why you couldn't defend it. And maybe you just didn't, maybe it was true and you didn't have the resources to defend it, or maybe it was false and you had to find the truth. But now somebody can't defend their beliefs, it doesn't matter to them
Hmm.
because you don't have to. You're
Yeah.
the God, you're the
Yeah. Though
source.
it's my
Well, you don't
truth,
have to
so
defend it. It's your
yeah.
it's your truth. So why does anybody else care? Well,
Hmm.
why do you have to defend it to somebody else? The reason you should have to defend it to somebody else is that's the only reason you know if it holds water or not.
Hmm.
If it's when you believe in objective truth, because now if you're just, let's just say it's a normal world, and you have a belief and you're talking about it amongst your friends and you all believe the same thing, there's always certain things that you just take for granted that nobody challenges. Maybe
Hmm.
they suspect there's a problem, but they don't want to say it because they don't want to have to go through all that hassle of trying to find another belief or whatever. Or maybe they just don't even think about it. So you take those beliefs up against people who disagree with you and kind of know what they're talking about. And then you're going to find whether there's a hole in your beliefs or your ability to defend your beliefs. Again, your beliefs can be true, you're just not defending them well. Either
Hmm.
way, whether you're not defending them well or they're not true, if you take them up against people who disagree with you and you realize something's wrong, then you can go back and you can check and you can say, well, what is it? And if it's just you're not defending it well, now you can defend it better. And if it's false, well, now you need to find the truth. But when you either just keep it amongst you and your friends who believe the same thing and don't ever take it out of there, or if you think you're the source of your own truth and it doesn't matter, either way, in the real world, you could be believing something false and not know it, not ever know it.
Hmm.
And it's difficult. Most of us don't want to know it, right? Because we're
Hmm.
comfortable with our beliefs. And to put it out there and to say, well, this is now I have to reconsider everything. That's difficult. What I try to tell the students is, look, you're still young. You're 20 years old, give or take. So, if you find out that you don't have the truth, so what? You've hardly lived life at all. It's better to find out now and go through the upheaval. And it would still be an upheaval at 20 as it is any other time. Let's say you're 50 or 60, 40, 50, 60, whatever. You've gone a lot further. It's a lot more, and you're more entrenched in it, number one, so it's harder to accept that maybe you're wrong. And number two, it's more of an upheaval in your life. Um, but and so it's much more difficult as you go on. But you don't want to get to the end of your life and realize you believed a lie all your life and lived a lie all your life. So no matter how old, and even if you're towards the end of your life, so you're getting older, and like me, you're on the downhill slide, right? So it's better to, even if you lived your whole life and you're 60, 70, 80 years old, it's still better at the end to say, oops, I was wrong. This kind of sucks, but I better find the truth before I die. It's better to do that than just say, nope, I'm not going to look for the truth. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm going to push that aside. Just going to believe what I believe because that's what it's easier to do. I'm not going to change at my age.
Mhm.
That's never a good idea. We should always be looking after for truth, and always being try. And if you have the truth, each subsequent truth you uncover is just going to make the truth you believe. It's just going to solidify it. But if you don't have the truth, then why are you holding on to it? But first, you got to get the young people to realize that there is objective truth out there, not just material truth, but whatever you want to call it, esoteric truth or spiritual truth or whatever, things that can't be dealt with by the scientific method, that it's there and it's objective. And a little bit of thinking could go a long way, right? There's either God or there isn't.
Mhm.
If there is a God, it doesn't matter if you don't think he's there. He's there anyhow. If there isn't a God, it doesn't matter if you think he's there. All right. He's not there no matter what you think. So he's either there or there. He's there or not there, independent of us. Is Jesus God? Well, if he is, then he's the God of the Muslims and the Jews and the Hindus, not just the Christians, but he's the God of everybody. If he's not, then he's not the God of anybody. So, these things, just with a little bit of thinking, you have to figure out that they are objective. Now, the other thing is, I think most students think that you have to reason to everything, the products of the Enlightenment. You have to reason to everything. So it's reasonable to think that you can't reason to who God is. But a lot of our knowledge doesn't come from reason, right? If we never met each other, I couldn't reason to your name, couldn't reason hardly anything about you, but you could reveal those things to me, right? So there's a lot of things that we don't know, especially about each other, that just get revealed to us. But even the creation, scientists don't sit in a closet somewhere all their life and come up in their mind what's outside, what the creation is like. They have to go actually revealed to them by their sight. They see it, they look at it. That's always the first step, some sort of revelation, some sort of thing that's given to you.
Mhm.
Reason can't be the beginning of knowledge because you have to have something to reason about. Something has to be given, something has to be revealed. Students could put a textbook on their desk and just think in their mind and know what's everything is in that textbook before they read it. That might be a lot easier, but they don't. The writer of the textbook has revealed through the written word his knowledge, and then they have to then read that, but they don't reason to it. It's revealed to them through the written word, or the professor reveals to them what he knows through the spoken word, or however he does it. So, there's lots of things that just have to be revealed. So if we have to reveal our name to each other, and if you love somebody, right, you want to reveal your name to them. You want to reveal things about yourself to them. Well, why is it any different with God? If we're going to say that God loves us, wouldn't he want to reveal his name to us? Wouldn't he want to reveal things about himself to us? So, we use the same word to describe God as we and his relationship or with us as we do with our relationships with each other. But then we want to give it a totally different definition. Well, yeah, we love each other. We want to reveal things about ourselves to each other, but God loves us, but he doesn't want to enter into relationship or reveal anything about himself to us. So again, and these aren't difficult concepts. We're just not in the mindset anymore,
Yeah.
especially young people. The older you get, people have kind of maybe they had some sort of Christian understanding in their youth or something, and so the older you get, the more these things make sense to people. But the younger you get, the more that these things just don't make sense to them at all because their mind is just totally secularized. And
Yep.
so,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. There's the rub with that. So, um, okay. So we also wanted to just mention as we're recording this, this is Thursday of the second week of Great Lent. As Orthodox Christians, our Great Lent started March 3rd, I believe, last Monday. And so, is there anything that you'd like to share about the time of Great Lent or this past week and a half? Anything like that?
yeah, the first week of Lent, as well as Holy Week, which is, the last week of, well, not really the last week of Lent, it's in addition to Lent.
Hmm.
But first week of Lent, we have, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, at least in the OCI, I think in most
Hmm.
churches. We have what the Great Canon of Saint Andrew of Crete, I think. And and this Great Canon, you're doing lots of prostrations. It's very penitential. And, you're going through it, and the words are, get you thinking about your sin and repentance and so on. You're doing lots of prostrations through it. And then Wednesday and Friday, of course, you have pre-sanctified liturgy. I was thinking, no one else has this. Catholics don't have it. Protestants don't have it. It's totally lost on them, even though, this is kind of ancient in the Orthodox Church. But it's the same thing with Holy Week. I mean, I guess the Catholics have a Holy Week, but it's just nothing compared to the Orthodox. And I don't think anybody does this first week. I think Catholics have Ash Wednesday or something. I don't know if they have anything else. But it's a very intense, repentant oriented week. Like again, with lots of prostrations and so on. Each time, you go through this little section of it, and it's talking about the sin and everything it goes through a lot of the biblical characters and their sin, and St. Andrew says, and I'm worse or whatever. And then you've got a mercy on me or whatever, and you prostrate. Uh, and but again, there's nothing like it anywhere. And I think of the same things when I've gone through Holy Week before. You go through Holy Week, and then you get into what we would call Pascha, or the West would call Easter. And I'm thinking, there's a lot of, and when I was Protestant, in most of the Protestant world, you just maybe you have a sunrise service or something, or maybe you have, the week before you have a, whatever service that would be. But it's just you don't you don't have this intense 40-day, 47-day, whatever it is, uh, services leading up to this. And then when Pascha comes, you have this great celebration of the resurrection, which goes on for another, 40 days or something, 50 days. So there's just nothing like it. And that's because the Orthodox Church has preserved these things down from the ages, because it is the true church. It's preserved all these things. And when you immerse yourself in it, there's just nothing like it. There's nothing to compare it to. And we were talking beforehand, you had said, you can't it's not just an intellectual thing you can simply just explain to somebody. It has to be experiential. And it is. You go do all these prostrations. Sometimes, people's legs are hurting and whatever, thighs are hurting, go up and down and up and down and up and down. And then in Holy Week, there's like two services a day. One day there's three services, and it's all focused on coming up to the crucifixion and the resurrection of Christ. And then there's this explosion of joy or whatever on Pascha night, which is like 11:30 at night till like two or three in the morning. And there isn't like anything like it anywhere. And I think it's because this is the true church, and everybody else is strayed from it. And everybody else is kind of dumbed it down. Protestants are really dumbed it down. Catholics have dumbed it down a lot. And so I would just say that if you're interested in it, start coming to some services. You can't, we can talk about it, and we can give maybe an apologetic about orthodoxy, but really you have to go, and when you have to experience it. We had somebody come. It's interesting because she was Roman Catholic. Just I don't know what day it was. Anyhow, it was maybe a pre-sanctified or something. And she's there, and I didn't realize she was Catholic when she said this, but she was saying, "Yeah, I just kind of, it's my first time here. I just wanted to experience the ancient church." And then somebody told me she was Catholic, and I'm thinking, wow, if you're Catholic, ideally you should believe that you are the ancient church.
Right.
But I think
Yep.
that they've strayed so far away from it and become so Protestantized that they no longer have that sense that this is the ancient church. This is the church from the beginning. This is the way things have always been. This is what's been preserved. And that I think in and of itself is miraculous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It. This is the time of year I think that we really experience it more intently. It's kind of that. It's what, 6 weeks plus Holy Week, and it is that opportunity for extra concentrated prayer and fasting and uh, almsgiving, just attention to our spiritual life, and we can really kind of go hard uh, for that period. And, not that, and then maybe we strive more through the rest of the year afterwards, sort of try to hold on to whatever progress we made. But yeah, it's a lovely time. It's challenging, you know. Um, I can remember Father John Reeves talking about like um, the second week of Lent being really difficult because I guess there's something about the first week with all that sort of a service every night and how special that is, and you feel like, oh, I'm really getting into it. And by the second week, it just, things kind of start going wrong, or we get grumpy about it, or tired, or what have you. Um, and I think probably actually the opposite could happen too, where the first week is a real slog, and then you kind of hit your stride. So every year is probably a little different. Um, but yeah, it's just we're so fortunate to have this concentrated time of attention to our spiritual life and preparation for Pascha, for the resurrection. So,
yeah,
yeah,
and it's easy
definitely.
during the year to kind of slack off maybe a little bit. We
Mm-hmm.
do have fasting times, and we do have times like that. But this is like you said, this concentrated, almost boot camp sort of thing that
Right,
you're going through, and
right.
it really helps you get back on track. If you've gone astray, if you haven't gone astray at all, well then this is another jumping off point.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can really. And then you talked about the fasting. The fasting is, sometimes people don't think, well, you're not fasting everything, but you start a week before with no meat. So that's 7 days with no meat before. Then you have the 40 days of Lent, no meat or dairy. Then you have and no meat or dairy, or really fish most of the time. And what else is it? No sex if you're married. Of course, if you're not married, you shouldn't be having sex anyhow. And then you got Holy Week, which is another 7 days. It's not just the 40 days of Lent, it's the 7 days before and the 7 days after. So and then it really all that together. If you're Orthodox and if you can get to as many services as possible and do as much fasting as you possibly can, all of that, the more you do, the more Pascha, joyful Pascha is. If you're slack or whatever, which whatever, but you're not gonna get the full effect of it. I think. And not gonna get the full spiritual effect of it either. Like more for spiritual uplifting or making progress in your spiritual life. Because remember, in Orthodoxy, salvation is the process of becoming godlike. So it's not just, um, well, I was saved, however many years ago. Now I'm just kind of biding my time, trying to be a moral person and whatever. There's always this cleaning up that's going on. Always more things that God can show you that needs to get cleaned up on your progress of making it to become godlike. So, and this is again another kind of jump start towards that. So anyhow,
Yeah. So, and if you're not Orthodox, some of these are great opportunities to sort of see what Orthodox services can be like, because they're some of the most special ones for sure.
and you don't get the full effect by watching it online either.
Oh no,
That
forget
can give you
that.
just a
Forget
kind of
that.
a that can get you kind of see sort of what it's like, but you have to really go to an Orthodox church and you have to experience it.
That's right. No. Yeah, the parish I go to is Antiochian, so we do, rather than a second pre-sanctified liturgy on a Friday, we do the Akatist hymn on Friday, which, so that's a little different. That's also very nice. On in a monastery like the on Mount Athos, they do both. They'll do in the afternoon, they do pre-sanctified liturgy as their vespers, and then they'll do sort of like at Compline, they'll do the Archivist hymn to the Mother of God, and it's an especially nice service because it really it's sort of like after this week of spiritual striving, you get a bit of consolation from her, which is very nice. So, and you know,
Yeah.
the weekends are just a little bit brighter too, in within the wisdom of the church sort of sees to that the weekdays are very uh, they're simpler, they're more penitential in nature, they're quieter, darker, and then the weekend, you know, oil and wine is allowed, and you can have liturgies again where the gifts are consecrated um, and so forth. So it's but it's just you just get into that rhythm. The weekends are just a little bit of a chance to catch your breath and then right back to it, and it's lovely. And next thing you know, it'll be like the fifth week of Lent, and next thing you know, it'll be Holy Week, and
Yeah.
there we go. So
Yeah, it does go fast.
it does, it does. So well, thanks for sharing your thoughts about that, Gary. So what we mainly wanted to talk about then today, uh, I think it's based on comments. Now, were these they're comments based on TikTok videos? Now, were those TikTok videos that you posted, like your shorts, or were these um, other uh, other people's videos than people were commenting on?
No, they were mine. They were mine. So
Okay, okay,
we post the shorts that I do on the podcast here, and then I take them also and post them on TikTok and Instagram and X. I think maybe Rumble. I think I do Rumble also. And so on, TikTok in my mind is kind of the wild west of free speech.
hmm
And so I just took some of the comments there, and it's tough. I think it's TikTok. I could be wrong about this, but I think it's TikTok that only allows a certain amount of characters to respond and to go back and forth. So it's kind of difficult.
hmm
Anyhow, I just took some of the comments that I see. I don't see them all, but I see a comment and I think, wow, that's kind of interesting. So we brought a few of them over. I think four or five of them,
okay,
and so we thought we'd talk about them tonight. Be easier to talk about them than to try to respond in writing in a
yeah,
limited amount of characters. I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's something else that limits your characters, but nonetheless, this is what we're going to do. And I think these are interesting points that people bring up.
okay. Do you want me to post them, or do we want to just talk about the concept and then go from there?
Uh, do you have it? You can read them or you can post them. It's up to you. I've got them
Let
here. I can read them too.
Okay, I'll go. I'll be the one to read them. I'll be the sort of the what do you call it? The person sort of hosting it, I guess. Okay, so the first comment was either God is powerless to stop the bad things in the world, or doesn't care to. Either way, they are unfit for worship and will need to beg my forgiveness.
And besides the fact that's a little arrogant, but I mean, I understand. I was very arrogant too, and I probably still am. But anyhow, so that the idea is, let me get these here. So the idea is either God is powerless to stop the bad things in the world or doesn't care, because bad things in the world keep going on. People say, well, how can there be a loving God or a good God or whatever? And these things continue. And this is kind of an old thing that I've heard a lot. He's either powerless or doesn't care. Either way, it's not worthy to be worshipped. Um, so my response to that is that, and I did this in a short, is that all evil in the world comes from man's free will. God
Okay.
didn't create anything evil. There's nothing inherently evil in the world. We as human beings, we take that which is in the world, which is good, neutral, whatever, it's certainly not bad, and we use it for good or bad. And we use it for everything. Well, I guess everything is good because God created everything is good. But everything is fallen now, but it's still inherently good. But we use it, our free will, we use our free will, and all the evil comes from man's misuse of his free will. So God gave us free will so that we could love God, so we could love our fellow man, so that we could become godlike. So free will in and of itself is good. Now we've misused it. So the only way for God to do away with evil in the world, in this current context, is to do away with man's free will. So, but if he does away with man's free will, then we don't have the opportunity to become godlike. We don't have the opportunity to love God and love our neighbor. So it seems to me that God thinks it's worthy to or to put up with the evil in the world for a period of time, so that we as human beings can love and become godlike.
Mhm.
It's not like you can't do it. Can't do. I mean, you look at the flood of Noah, right? And obviously, he wiped out all the world except for one family to do away with the evil. Then, and the same people will cry against that who are saying that God can't, deal with evil. But what's he going to do if our free will is the source of all the evil, and yet our free will is the only way we can love and become godlike? Well, which is more important? Allowing us human beings to love and become godlike, or do away with evil in the world. And I would say that it's more important to allow us as human beings, because if anybody has, I mean, God sees all the evil, and He hates it the most because He's God and He's the holiest, and He sees it all, and He's omniscient. He can't not see it. But He's willing to put up with that, so that we as human beings can become godlike, have communion with God. Which is one thing I didn't say before. Love God, love our neighbor, uh, become godlike, have communion with God, and dwell with Him forever. So that's more important at this point, at this stage in time, than doing away with the evil in the world. Eventually, the evil in the world will be done away when everybody has ultimately made that decision at some point. But until that time, God's willing to put up with the evil in the world so that we as human beings can benefit.
Right.
It's my take on it, anyhow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's, like you said, it's kind of an arrogant question in the first place or statement because we do see examples, like you said, with Noah, and there's other examples in the Old Testament where God, in His perfect knowledge, sees that there's some group doing evil things that need to be wiped away. Um, and God alone knows what that measure is. Um, we a few of us went to Texas A&M not too long ago and heard a talk from Father Seraphim Aldea, who's a monk. I guess he's in Scotland now, but someone essentially kind of asked that question. It was interesting. It was probably his answer was really excellent. Maybe one of the best I've heard. And of course, it was coming from a believing person in that case, but they're basically saying, if we do believe in a loving God, but how do you explain it to someone when you know children are undergo some kind of abuse or what have you? And his response was, he said, well, I mean, we select something like someone like children because, of course, that's innocent life, but anyone suffering abuse is, we would say, is just as bad. Um, he said, but who's going to uh, pay in order to set this aright? And then he sort of talked about this idea. He's from Romania originally, and he said in the old country, when a baby's born, like or actually even before the baby's born, when a couple realizes that they're having a baby, that like the priest will come to the house, give them communion, and bless their house, and they sort of protect, even once the child is born, they protect the child from visitors to a large degree. And he said, think about really what we are. He said, we're these people and we have our guardian angels, but to the degree that we're holding on to our passions, we have demons that are also kind of following us around. And so if I go to some place and and I'm lustful, or if I go to some place and I'm angry or what have you, I'm kind of bringing that around other people, you know. And even if you can't look at someone and say, I have directly, offended you in some particular way, still, because I have not lived up to my calling to be a holy saint, I've not done what I can to be in communion with God. Uh, that's hurting you, and that's making the world less than it should be. And he said, so who is at fault for this abuse of a young child or uh, an older person or what have you? And he said, I am. I'm the one who's. He said, and we all are. So like as soon as you start asking that sort of question, God would have to wipe out the human race essentially to really set that right, because we're all responsible for it, and it's just God in his patience that he's waiting that, and he's waiting for us to turn around, for us to repent, to draw close to him and heal some of that, you know. um so yeah, it's far more complex. Usually that kind of question, of course, is kind of a gotcha. um it's it's not really asking that question. It's just saying, well, this is how God is, and he doesn't live up to my standard ultimately. So
Yeah, yeah. And we always want to blame God.
mm-hmm.
It's always God's fault from Adam and Eve on,
Yeah.
right? God, it was the woman you gave me.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Eve blamed the serpent. He blamed the devil.
Yeah.
And so we always want to blame somebody other than ourselves. But yeah, you're right. We've all contributed to the evil in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and so to some degree, we're all guilty. But what do we want God to do?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, we want our freedom, and freedom is good. Then we want him to step in, and every time we don't like something, we want him to stop it. Well, do
Mm-hmm.
we have freedom or don't we have freedom? And
Right.
if we do, and we misuse it, we have to blame ourselves. And we can't blame God or anybody else. Yes, there's lots of horrible evil in the world, but it's because of us. People say to me, "Well, where was God in the Holocaust?" And I always say, "Well, why are you blaming God for the Holocaust? What did He
Mm-hmm.
do? He didn't do it. He didn't tell us to do it. He didn't give us a commandment to do it. It's not part of the of our conscience to do something like that. Where were the people that could have stopped it and didn't, including the United States of America, who knew about it beforehand and didn't do anything to stop it. So no, God's given the world to us, and He's given us freedom, so we can become godlike. We've misused that freedom. We've brought a lot of evil upon ourselves, including all the tornadoes and hurricanes and so on. Everything that's in the fallen world, we did. Adam and Eve to begin with, but like you said, we've all contributed to it because we've all sinned.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just Adam and Eve that sinned. We've all contributed to the evil in the world. So we need to look at ourselves and say, no, we're to blame, or I'm to blame, and I need to get my life right with God as my part in kind of setting this straight. But one of the things I tell the students, one of the things you'll find out either in this world or in the next, hopefully in this world, is that God is never to blame. If there's blame to go around, it's not God. So we should start looking somewhere else. God is love, God is goodness, God is peace, God is truth. He is all these things, and He is not to blame for anything. We are to blame, and we need to stop blaming each other and blaming God and start taking the blame for ourselves.
Absolutely. Okay, then the second comment, and I think this is probably from a short of yours where you were encouraging people to seek God with all their heart, right? And to seek truth, and that to be the main focus of our life. And so here's the question from the comment: which God should I seek? Krishna with all my heart? Is that okay with you?
No, it's not okay with me. Because if she would have listened, he or she, I think this was a she, I forget. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. Um, so if we really would have listened to it, I didn't say to seek any particular God. To seek if you don't know if there's a God or not, or if you don't know who the God is, then the idea is cry out to God from your heart. It doesn't have to be out loud, but you can do it day and night. You can still continue to live your life as you normally would have lived it, but cry out for God day and night. God, make yourself known to me in a way I can't deny. There's lots of spirits out there. So number one, you have to always want to know truth because God is truth, and you can't give up. But if you seek one particular God like Krishna, you're seeking a demon basically, and that demon will give you an experience because you're not seeking truth. Somebody one time said to me, "Well, I'm gonna do what you say, but it can't be Christianity." Well, then you're not really seeking truth. So if you don't know, you're kind of seeking the generic God out there. You don't know who He is. There's no specific yet, but whoever's out there, make yourself known to me in a way I can't deny. It's very important that you only want to know truth and you never give up. Because if you are deceived for a while, and you only want to know truth, deception can look good, obviously, or it wouldn't be a deception. Kind of like this vast field and it looks great, it looks beautiful, glitters like gold and diamonds and so on. But it's not very deep. And if you keep digging deep, you'll realize now this isn't what I thought it was. But when you really find God, you can dig as deep as you can get, and it's always going to be God. It's always going to be the truth. So it's important that you only want to know truth, and you're not going to do that by if you don't know who the God is by seeking any particular God, because the scriptures say that behind the gods of the nations are demons. So if it's not the true God, then it's the demons behind these different religions. So you have to seek God with all your heart, only wanting to know truth, never giving up, and until He makes Himself known to you in a way you can't possibly deny. And so it's not like a sign, it's not like a materialistic sign, a leaf falling off a tree that you're looking at, and if that leaf falls off that tree in the next 5 minutes, there must be a God, or God must be this. It's not like that. God reveals Himself within your heart and becomes so clear to you that you can't deny it. But it's just an outward sign. Well, anything can do that. It can just be a coincidence. But if it's an inward revelation that you can't deny, and you can ultimately you can fall away from it. You can walk away from it. You can slowly but gradually float away from it, so to speak. But ultimately, you will have found out that yes, that was God, and He did make Himself known to you, and you did know it for a time, and you let it slip by. God is able to make Himself known to you in that way. You can't deny it. So clear that you can't deny it. But you have to want it, and it can take a while. I think we get into this a little bit later, so I won't go too much more into this. But yeah, is it okay if I seek after Krishna? No, it's not even okay if you don't know who it is. If you just say, oh, it's got to be. I'm just going to seek after Jesus. Well, how do you know it's Jesus? You have to seek after God. Unless God has shown that to you, then go ahead. But if not, then there's the only way to know. You can't reason to it. You can't, you can study all the world religions, and at the end of all that time, you're just going to pick the one you like the best, and you could still be wrong. So there's lots of things that you can do. You can watch debates. And I'm not saying don't study the world religions, but ultimately you need something more than that. You need something more than watching debates because the better debater might not be the one with the truth. So you can watch the debates, you can study the religions, you can talk to people, but ultimately in the midst of all that, as you're going through your day, say, God, make yourself known to me in a way I can't deny. And again, you can continue to live your life the way you want. There's no reason to stop. There's no reason to give up. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll probably repeat myself in one of these next questions. But ultimately, you know, it has to come as a cry from the heart, and it's going to take some time probably. But just persevere. Don't give up.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, what we've talked about here, what you're really talking about is, um, yeah, we're not reasoning to it. We're looking for God to answer. Basically, we're looking for God to
Yeah.
make that clear and break through. Um, there was a fellow, I just for anonymity's sake, I won't say where I encountered this person. But I was talking to this fellow this past week, and he was kind of telling me a little bit about his spiritual background. And what I came to realize is that the way that he proceeded through uh, like reading scripture and things like that was that he was going to look for that deeper insight behind it all and be more clever than everyone, and basically find that like almost like gnostic type information. At the end, let's say you read all, as you've said, let's say you've read all the holy books, and you've somehow penetrated them all with your mind, and you've gotten to this deeper truth behind it. That's still just a product of your own mind. It's still just a product of your own reasoning. um, unless God breaks through, and He can break through no matter what, no matter if we're incredibly intelligent or a simple person. But that's what we're after. We're after God, who is the one who's revealed Himself to us.
And we're not going to find Him through pride. We're
No.
going to find Him through humility and realizing, hey, I can't do it. I need God to do it.
Mm.
And it takes a while for somebody to get to that.
Yeah.
But just to think, even if you, like you said, even if you study all the world religions, how do you know the one you chose is going to be the right one?
Hmm.
Are you trusting in your intellect that much? The one that could see, the one that could seem the most logical to fallen man isn't necessarily the one that isn't necessarily God, just because you can make up. So if you're going to think of a monotheistic God, monotheistic religion, you're going to think one person, one God. That's going to be the logical one. The
Hmm.
logical one isn't going to be three persons, one God, right? So if you're just going based on logic, you can take Judaism or Islam. We have to go by revelation. Is that just because that seems right to man, just kind of that makes sense to our logical little minds that we have, doesn't mean that that's the truth. Only God can show us the truth
Yeah,
when it comes to this sort of thing.
that's a great point. Yep. Okay. And then the next comment said, maybe it was this. Do you think it was the same person? Maybe different
I don't know.
person.
Yeah.
Says, or maybe I sought him with all my heart for decades. Maybe as a teenager, I guess, awake in bed at night crying because I didn't want to go to hell.
Yeah. Now, there's no way that somebody like me can know what this particular person's experience was like and how much he sought God and exactly what happened. But what we can say is, all right, you were a teenager and you went through something. Why give up? You're never going to find anything if you give up. One of the things I tell students on campus is, so you'll have these scientists and they'll spend their entire career, 20, 30, 40, 50 years maybe, seeking a cure for some disease. And if they don't find it, they'll pass their findings down to what they have down to somebody else who can pick up the ball and run with it. Um, and that's just a cure for one disease. And we're going to die anyhow. There's a gazillion diseases out there, or just old age. Something's going to get us, and we're going to die anyhow. So, what's the point of giving up? If you give up, you're not going to find it. We have this artificial time frame that we put on God. You have to do it within this amount of time. I've sought X amount of time, and you didn't make yourself known. So that's it. I'm going to accuse you for the rest of my life of not really, wanting me to know or something. But here's the thing that I found: most of us, when we first begin to seek after God, our desire to be our own God, go our own way, do our own thing, our desire to be our own God is greater than our desire for God. And as long as that's the case, then we kind of hamstring God. Because again, he respects our freedom. You love somebody, you respect their freedom. God respects our freedom. So yes, in our own mind, we may think, oh, I want God more than anything else in the world. But from God's perspective, which is obviously an omniscient one, then he can see, no, this person still really wants to be their own God. Maybe it's like this. Maybe it's just like this. Maybe it's like this. But whatever it is, as long as we want to be our own God more than we want God, then God can't do it without infringing on our freedom. So what happens is the seeking process slowly, very slowly changes that equation. And it can take a long time if it's like this. It can take a shorter time if it's like this. We don't know what the time frame is, but it slowly but surely changes the equation. And once our desire for God is greater than our desire to be our own God, then God is free to make himself known to us without infringing on our freedom. Right? So that's very important. And it's very important that we don't know where we are in that where we still up here, we still down here, where are we? We don't know. But there's no sense giving up. So as we said before, when I jumped the gun a little bit, since the primary way of seeking God is to cry out with all your heart, God, make yourself known to me in a way I can't deny. Since that doesn't have to be done out loud, it can be done anywhere, anytime, all during the day, multiple times a day. So why, but you're still living your life the way you would have lived it if you don't do that. So why not do it? How does it hurt you? Why give up? Okay, you were a teenager. Maybe you weren't ready yet. Maybe you're still very self-willed. Maybe you didn't want to go to hell, and that's good, and that was a start, but then you gave up. Now, I don't know this particular person's situation, but I do know that we have a loving God who desires us to be with him. And if we don't give up, we will get to that place before we die, um, that, where or we'll die trying, but I don't think we're going to die trying because God loves us. But before we die, we're going to get to that place where our desire for God is going to be greater than our desire to be our own God, if we just persevere and don't give up, he will be able to make himself known to us. And if for some reason we don't quite get there, it doesn't matter that much because we're on our way there. And God can finish it up on the other side if he wants to. God can do anything he wants. But you have to be going in that direction at least. If you give up, then you're going in the wrong direction. So, you can be right there, you've gone this long journey, maybe just, a few steps away from finding God. And so I've done enough and I'm turning back. Well, how do we know that person didn't do that? I mean, he's only a teenager. Teenagers tend to be very self-willed. I'm sure he really wanted not to go to hell, but he also may have wanted to do whatever he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not very introspective even at my age, much less a teenager's age. So I would just say for anybody out there who's been seeking God for a while, it doesn't seem like anything's happened. Something is happening. You are changing within. You can't perceive it. It is God who is drawing you. You can't perceive it. But why give up? Nobody's ever given me a good reason to give up. You know, it's not like that. I was saying, go on the top of a mountain, build yourself a shack, chant for 40 years. At the end of that 40 years, you'll find God.
Mm-hmm.
And we're saying, as you go through your life, God, make yourself known to me in a way I can't deny. You could do that a million times a day. You could do it twice a day. You can do it, morning and evening, whatever it is. It just has to come from the heart. You have to want it with all your heart ultimately, which is a process. We don't usually want it with all our heart right at the beginning. You have to want it with all your heart and only wanting to know truth. And eventually you'll get there if you don't give up. But if you do give up, no, you're not going to get there. You know, and it'll be your fault you didn't get there because you gave up. I understand it can be difficult and it can be frustrating and it can be discouraging. But again, why give up? What's the point of giving up? Trying to find that cure for that disease, I'm sure, spending all your adult life, all your adult career trying to find a cure for disease and not being able to find it could get, frustrating too. But if they're not going to give up trying to find a cure for disease, then why should we give up trying to find eternal life? Why would you give up? There's no reason to give up.
Yep. And the downside of it is you're still living your life, right? If God does not reveal himself, you're still living your life as you wished. But the upside of it is that you encounter truth. You know who God is. You have a new life.
You really have nothing to lose because you don't know God now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you give up, you're not going to know God. But if you continue to seek, maybe you will know God.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say you will if you really seek with all your heart and only wanting to know truth and don't give up. But the person listening may not know that. But so
Right.
just from that perspective, why give up? Whenever I was seeking God, I just didn't occur to me to give up. Now, I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but it didn't occur to me to, what's the point of giving up? Why wasn't very philosophically minded at the time. Probably am not now either. So, but that's just a simple question. Why give up? How are you going to benefit by giving up?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, the next one, and I guess they're answering something that you had said. They say, "No, he's going to punish me for not bowing down to him, even though I'm a good person."
Yeah. It's amazing how we can judge God. But anyhow, even though I'm a good person, and we all do it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but we all do it. But I think in the end, we're going to say, how could I ever judge God? But a good person, okay? And I hear this a lot. Well, it doesn't really matter. I don't even have to find God. I'm a good person. I'm going to heaven because I'm a good person. God will see that in the end. He'll see that I'm a good person. Everything will be okay. Well, the obvious question is, what standard are you using to declare yourself to be good? Are you sure that's the same standard God is going to use in the end? Because if it's not, it really doesn't matter. Because you can look really good under one standard and really bad under another standard. And so you have to make sure you have the standard that God is going to use. So in other words, well, you can't get into, like, let's say somebody wants to get into Penn State. You can't go up to, Shields Building, which is, where you do all that stuff, and say, look, I have this, I've qualified to get into the community college of my hometown. Can I use that to get into Penn State? Nobody would do that. If you did, they'd laugh you out of the building. right? Because you have to meet the standard of the place you want to enter into. And one example, I like to use is, or I used to like to use when people were hanging out there was, and I still do once in a while, I guess. If you're, let's say you're, Old Main lawn, if you're at Penn State, you would know that's just a big lawn out in front of the administration building. So let's say, and people go out there these days, they'll throw frisbees or whatever. Let's say you're playing football out there and it's a rainy, muddy day. And, you're playing for a couple hours and everybody's just covered head to toe with mud, but you somehow you're muddy, but you're not as muddy as everybody else. So at the end of the game, everybody looks at you and says, "How'd you stay so clean?" Now, again, you're not clean, you're muddy, but you're not, total covered with mud from head to toe. And then, the bells start to ring and you say, "Oh, I got to get to class." So you run into class and you go into the classroom and everybody's moving away from you saying, "Get out of here. What are you doing? You're disgusting. You're muddy. You're bringing all this mud into the classroom." Well, a minute ago, you were clean. Now you're muddy because it's a different standard. So the standard of being a good person in the United States of America is very low. Now, you can be a drunken, fornicating, sodomizing abortionist in the midst of a sex change, if that were possible, and still be a good person. We have a very low standard of what it is to be good. So of course, you're a good person. I mean, who isn't a good person? You have to try not to be a good person by the standards of American society. The standard of good in heaven is much different. So we all at best, unless we've made a lot of progress becoming godlike, we all at best have a corrupted goodness. Right? So we're not perfectly good. We're not perfectly evil. We're somewhere in between. We were created to be good. We were created good. We've fallen. We've sinned. We've done all these things. We've corrupted ourselves, but we're not thoroughly evil. So we have a corrupted goodness. Is that the goodness that heaven's going to be? Can we knock on the door of heaven with a corrupted goodness and say, "Hey, let me in, I belong there"? Now, first of all, heaven is a place of perfect purity, right? If a basic definition of God is he is that of which there can be no greater, heaven is a place of which there can be no greater because it's typified by the God who is he who there can be no greater. So if heaven is a place where there can be no greater, then there's no sin there. There's no corruption there. It's all perfectly holy good. But then it goes even beyond that. So even if somebody says, "Oh, I'm perfectly holy good. I've never sinned, never done anything wrong." Well, the goodness in heaven goes beyond that to a godlike goodness, which can only be done by the God-man Jesus. He's the only one that can make you godlike. So if you believe that in and of yourself, you can not only be perfectly purely good, never have sinned, never had a wrong desire, intention, motivation, actions, words, thought processes. Even if you could do all that, you can't make yourself godlike. And every human being in heaven has a godlike goodness to them. So there's no way you can say you're good enough for heaven. You might be good enough for the United States of America. You might be the best person in the world, best person who ever lived, but you're still going to fall short of the standard of heaven. But I hear that a lot. I'm a good person, but as if God is going to judge us by the standard of the United States of America. Oh, you came from the United States of America, early 21st century. Let's see what their standard is. Oh, yeah, you met their standards. So we'll let you in here. And wherever you go, you have to meet the standard of the place you want to enter into. And that standard in heaven there isn't not a higher standard.
Yeah, it seems like it's usually not ever a great situation when someone has to say, "Well, I'm a good person." It's usually um, ultimately excusing bad behavior, which we all engage in. And if we're
Yeah.
honest with ourselves, we tend to be pretty selfish a lot of the time, and so that's what we're trying to heal. So yeah, don't give in to thinking that you're a good person. Definitely. And then the last one here, someone says, if God is omniscient and has a plan for everyone, it stands to reason he knows everything you're going to do and has accounted for it in the plan. Therefore, man has no free will.
Yeah. I was thinking about this one today a little bit. I think I might do the next short on this one. So God is omniscient, but how does God know? Basically they're saying God knows everything, so you don't have free will. And they're thinking that God either causes everything or God got everything started and he knows how it's going to end up because he has everything started now. It can only go one direction. So once he started everything in motion, it's kind of a cause and effect thing, and he knows everything that's going to happen because of that. That's not how God knows. God created space and time. There was no space and time before he created it. He is therefore outside of space and time. And because of that, he can see past, present, and future as we see the present. So he doesn't know our future actions because he's caused them or because he's set everything in motion and knows how it's going to work out. He sees our future actions because he sees them, like we see the present, like you seeing me now doing this. God sees the future. So he's not causing it. He's not forcing anything to happen. He's just seeing it. So since he's seeing it, we can still have free will, and God can know,
Mhm.
right? So God knowing and God causing are not the same thing. And people oftentimes I've noticed in arguments it's very difficult to get people to see that God can know without causing because in our situation we can't. If we're going to know something that clearly that hasn't happened yet, we have to cause it and know it's going to go that way.
Mhm.
Since God is, if you imagine yourself outside of space and time, then you're kind of looking at past, present, and future all there in front of you. It's all happening, and you're seeing it. You can see the past as if it's the present, obviously the present if it's the present, future as if it's the present, and God can then work in all of that without infringing on our freedom because He's just seeing it happen. That's kind of a quick answer, but that all depends on how you think God knows.
Yeah, and ultimate there's some kind of underlying assumptions that are built into it, and obviously there's parts of Christianity that succumb to this kind of viewpoint as well. But you're we're just trying to imagine what God is like. We can't really know how God knows. God is outside of time. We'd have no experience of anything but time,
Yeah.
so we're kind of baking that into our understanding of God. Um, And we're also kind of looking at the universe and saying that um, we're ascribing it some sort of like mechanical materialist determinism, like if I do this, then this thing will happen. Well, God can override those things. God can, there's a whole layer of everything where we are spiritually deciding things, and that the spiritual decisions ultimately then manifest in the material world. And it's probably not even proper to kind of talk about these things as though they're like distinct things, separated things. It's not. Um, it's almost certainly not the way the ancient people thought about it in Jesus's time. But yeah, there's a lot of assumptions baked into that, and if then you're laying that on top of God, and that's just you know why should our understanding of God accept those assumptions? It's really what it comes down to.
It's another way of judging God too. Basically, you're
Yep.
saying God
Hmm.
has no right to judge us because
It's his fault.
what I do
Hmm.
is inevitable.
Hmm.
Now, as we said before with atheism, if there is no God and there is no soul in man and everything is just materialistic, then the materialistic universe does work by cause and effect as far as we understand it. And so that would be the case. But since we have a soul, which isn't part of the material world, then that overcomes that. And we can have free will because we have a soul that isn't just a material object, brought along by cause and effect. Um, but again, it all depends on how God knows, and it's all a way to say I'm not responsible. God can't judge me.
Hmm.
I didn't, I couldn't have done anything but what I did, and that's just not going to fly in the end because you're going to see that no, you are fully responsible for what you do, and it's better to come to that grips with that now rather than trying to play these kind of mind games to try to get you out of the responsibility that you have before God, because you will be accountable in the end, and God will again, God is never at fault. One of
Hmm.
the things you got to learn, God is never at fault. He's never wrong. He's never at fault. He's always loves us. That's his nature. He can't do evil, and so he can't lie, can't cheat, can't steal, can't go against his nature. So if God, even if you put away everything that we said, God is that of which there can be no greater, then he has to be these things. And he can't fall, because if he's not these things where he can fall like we did, then he's not, then you can think of something greater. And you have to just have to get it into your head that no, God's not at fault, we're at fault, and we need to change. And God is absolutely just in his judgments. And and what are we going to do about it? We have to decide what we're going to do. Yes, you can spend your whole life blaming God. You can spend your whole life saying, I'm not at fault. Then what are you going to do in the judgment? You stand before the God who is truth, and you can't hide anything. And this is a world of darkness and deceit, right? So you can be talking to somebody face to face. You can be smiling at them. You can be the nicest person in the world, and in your mind, you can be thinking the most horrible things about them. You can't do that in the next life. In the next life, you stand before God and everything is exposed. There's no arguing. There's no high-priced lawyers, because everything is just right there, exposed. You're standing in front of truth. When you're standing in front of truth, you can't lie, you can't deceive, you can't hide anything. And so it's best to come to these understandings now. Humble ourselves. Stop blaming God. Start blaming ourselves, and start seeking and finding God and getting ourselves right with God, because what else are we going to do?
Mhm.
We really think we're going to get it to the end and say, God, you're at fault. He's going to say, oh, yes, I'm at fault. No, that's going to seem stupid in the end, because we're going to see God as he is. And we're going to realize, oops, God can't be at fault. God is always good. I'm the one to blame. But I never repented because, I didn't want to, and I hardened my heart. And by that time, you're going to be eternally unrepentant, and there's nothing God's going to be able to do for you, and it's not going to be good. So now's the time that we have for repentance. Now, each like we said before, each day we go through our lives sinful and unrepentant. So another day we're hardening our heart. Another day we're darkening our conscience. And we do that long enough, and eventually in this life or the next, we're going to become eternally unrepentant. And the thing is, we were never meant, mankind was never meant to stand before God in a state of, or interact with God in a state of sin and unrepentance. We're always meant to interact with God in a state of godlikeness ourselves. That was the plan from the beginning. And if we meet God in a state of godlikeness, then God will meet God as he really is: paradise, love, goodness. But if we meet God in a state of sin and unrepentance, he'll still be paradise. He'll still be good. He'll still be love, but we won't experience him like that, because we'll be in a state of sin and unrepentance. And everything about God will become a condemnation about everything about us, not because God is condemning us, but because we're in the wrong state to experience God, a state we were never meant to be in to experience God. So the God-man Jesus came and sacrificed himself. I mean, just becoming man, the God-man, is a sacrifice. And then going everything, then having to live this life with all the humilities of this life, and then come against those who hate him and those who killed him, and so on and so forth. Did all that so that we could become God-like, so that when we meet God, it'll be a good experience for us. So God doesn't change. God's not good for people in heaven and bad for people in hell. He's not, I'm going to torment these people. I'm going to be good to these people. God is always the same. It's our state that changes. We change. God doesn't
Mhm.
change. And our experience of God changes depending on who we are and what we've become. And right now, very few of us are godlike. Hopefully, some of us are on the way to becoming godlike, and hopefully more will get on that road to becoming godlike, because you just can't, your experience in eternity of a good, holy, loving, merciful God will not be good for you if you're in a state of sin and unrepentance.
Mhm.
Even the love of God and the mercy of God will become a condemnation, because it'll just expose all the times you could have loved and you didn't. You could have shown mercy and you didn't. There'll be and you'll see it, and there'll be this kind of automatic kind of condemnation that'll come upon you, maybe even bring it on yourself, because you'll see how bad you really are, and how many horrible things you really did. By that time, what are you going to do? You become eternally unrepentant. There's no more. If we sin in this world and in this body as it is, then we have to repent in this world, in this body as it is. You can't repent in the next world, either with no body in the beginning or resurrected body, for what you did in this world with this body and in this world. So it's this world that we're given for repentance. And so this is the world we have to take advantage of it.
That's right. And I mean, we would say, as the good news is that God has done everything he possibly could in order to bring us into a good state with him. Um, and he's gone to absolutely every length to that. And so it's not going to hold up in the end that we're going to turn around and blame him. So now is the time. Now is the time to seek the truth and to come to know him.
He's even doing everything he can now because he's drawing us, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
notice it because
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't. You know, people say, why doesn't God just kind of hang out in the sky and everybody has to see him and everybody has to know? Because then there's no freedom. God values our freedom more than we know. But he is outside of, I think what we'll find in the end is outside of God, infringing on our freedom, for every single one of us, he will have done everything possible to get our attention, to draw us to himself, without forcing it, without infringing on our freedom, without, making himself known against our will. We'll see that he gave us every chance. Most of us these days, we're just too distracted.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, I know this is on social media, and I use social media, so I'm not just thinking it's horrible, terrible. But there's everything is good and bad. One of the bad things is, you're always going from boom, 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 thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, and it has an effect on your mind after a while, and you're easily distracted, and you need that next thing. So it can be difficult for many of us to really say, no, I'm going to focus on seeking after God. No, I need the next video. I need the next podcast. I need the next short. I need the next, little thing here. So those things aren't bad in and of themselves. We all have to be careful that we're not getting addicted to that, boom, boom. We always need the new thing. We always need the new thing. We always need the new thing. So we can
Mm-hmm.
seek after God because, a lot of times people say, I don't have time to seek after God. Well, we got plenty of time. Because any time in the day or night, we can say, God, make yourself known to me in a way I can't deny. We just got other things we'd rather do.
That's right.
And that's going to be the truth in the end. And we're going to regret that maybe, but
Yeah.
that's going to be the truth.
Yeah. The hour we spent looking at YouTube shorts or TikToks or what have you, uh,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be on our side that we spent the time in that way. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think if we say to God, and that God didn't have time, I mean, he could probably show most of us years of our lives
Mm-hmm.
just playing video games, social media, recreational activities. None of these things are bad in and of themselves. But if we say we don't have time to seek after God, and then we spend years, maybe decades of our life doing these things,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe it's not the best use of our time to be on these things as long as we are. And again, I'm on them. There's a lot of good things up there that you can benefit from, but you have to have your priorities. And your first priority is to seek after, get yourself right with God, get on that path to becoming godlike, and become as godlike as you can in this life.
Amen. Well, it's getting kind of late in State College.
Always
It
late in
is
state college,
it is spring break, so maybe you're a little more rested than normal. But
maybe.
uh, it is getting late, so I'll just say Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
Have a good night.
Yeah.